So, if you're anywhere near the gun world and you aren't living under a rock, you will know that the NRA has had a bumpy few years. But you should also know that they've made huge strides in turning the ship around and doing good things. And I'm actually very happy and excited about their future. But they're still transitioning. They're still making sure to get the right people in the right places. And there is an election coming up. They're electing board members. And so we've asked Rob Beckman from Ohio to come on and talk about why he's running for NRA board. How you doing, Rob?
I'm doing good, Mike. Appreciate you having me on your radio show.
You bet. So let's talk about. So you're running for NRA board of directors, right?
Correct.
Okay. So let's talk about your background first. What do you do? What's your experience with guns? That sort of thing.
Well, professionally, I'm a IT project manager for a global manufacturer, and I run projects all over the world. And part of that has given me a lot of visibility into how large companies run, how their boards operate, and different things along those lines. So professionally, I'm not necessarily in the gun industry, but as a hobbyist, I've been in the gun industry now for close to 30 years. Originally starting off with just deer hunting in the Midwest. Many people do that. And then as concealed carry started coming about in the early 2000s, I was one of the initial wave of people in Ohio got our concealed carry licenses. And looking and seeing what was being taught, I went along and said, well, this would be something I could teach too. I was already teaching hunter education, so it just kind of naturally came, and I became a NRA pistol instructor, which allowed me to go along and teach the Ohio concealed carry course. After doing that for a couple of years, I went along and was eligible to become an NRA training counselor, so I became a training counselor. For the audiences, the difference between just being an NRA instructor and NRA training counselor is as a NRA training counselor, I'm able to go along and train new instructors for it, who can then go along and train new students for it. And not only did I become an NRA training counselor, but I also finished up my certification with the NRA with all their civilian courses. So rifle, pistol, shotgun, muzzleloader, personal protection, refuse to be a victim, all these different courses. I'm one of the few training counselors that have 100% of the NRA training courses that I'm certified in order to teach. That also kind of led me into my other kind of hobby, and that is being the host of the Firearm Trainer podcast. Because as a training counselor, you get a lot of questions from new instructors. Where can I teach at? How do I go along and deal with these kind of issues? How do I just market my class? How do I go along and get those new students? And how do they improve themselves? Simple questions like that. And NRA, USCCA, everybody who does certification courses focuses on their certification of their course for it. They don't necessarily have a business course or telling you how to work with social media. Anybody in the firearm industry knows how difficult social media can be at times. And that's where I kind of saw the opportunity there to go along and create a podcast, focus at instructors on different topics for it, about, what is some additional training that people could go along and take, something along the lines, from a first aid course to teach the instructor how to teach their students, or going along and advanced pistol craft or rifle shooting. Where would they go along and find additional information about reaching out to various demographics that are being victimized by criminals and helping those demographics out? And all those kind of questions we've brought up on the podcast. And the one that I'm kind of very passionate about is when it comes to mental health. I know that's been one of those hot button issues. Nationally, everybody talks about mental health. But the one thing where I go along and kind of, really bring it back to home for my listeners is to go along and have people realize that firearm owners are, I think, close to 80% successful on committing suicide. And the thing is, those people aren't necessarily the ones that are, committed to mental hospitals or at some point. There is somebody who is having an issue during their life, having, relationship problems, financial problems, health problems, all these different things. And the one thing that they forget about is that they're, without them being around, their family, their friends, their siblings, their parents, whoever they leave behind, are going to be left with that question: why'd they do it? And that's where I go along as an instructor, and as a training counselor. I make sure people realize that we do a lot of crazy things, stupid things. Sometimes we get ourselves into trouble. But when you're talking about family and friends, they're the most forgiving people. Your kids don't care about, that you had your house foreclosed on. They just want the parent around. Your parents don't care if you broke up with your umpteenth spouse. They want their child around still. Those types of things, to where, okay, it's not a great situation, but realize there are resources for it. And then along those same lines, make sure gun owners know that if they're having issues, sometimes, as much as we want to go along clean to our guns, we know it's better maybe to give them to a friend, have them outside the house, so that when we get into a heated argument with our spouse, it doesn't become a temptation for us or them. And just being responsible from that standpoint, support Second Amendment 110%, but also go along and talk about, being responsible ownership, of making sure your gun isn't used inappropriately by either you or somebody else. So that's kind of a little bit about who Rob Beckman is and kind of what brought us here. And then
I love that.
go ahead.
Thanks for sharing that. I've taken a ton of classes. I've worked with a lot of different instructors, and I think some instructors do feel kind of nervous to bring up the concept of mental health, or to talk about suicide. And so I love that that's something that you are passionate about and that you make sure you teach in your classes. But I just want to kind of ask you a little bit about, how does all of this background, your instructor experience, your business experience, how does that translate to what you're trying to do with the NRA and joining the board?
Well, I'm passionate about the Second Amendment, as I said. And about 5 years ago, when the NRA started having problems, people were getting upset about what the current leadership was doing, or in some cases wasn't doing. I was working with people similar to myself that went along and said, I'm gonna run for the board. I need somebody to collect signatures for me. And I was going along and being one of those people that helped collect signatures for them to get them on the ballot. And then once they got on the ballot, working to educate people to say, hey, vote for these people. They are committed to reforming. And last year, out of the 26 board positions that were up for elections, the NRA 2.0 reformers were able to go along and capture, I believe, 19 or 20 of those.
Wow.
So when you go along and, we're slowly turning the tide. The ship is turning, because Doug Hamlin, the current executive vice president, he's one of the reformers. He wants to see things reform, and he's been making a lot of progress. Bill Bockenberg, the current president, he's also a reformer. So 2 years ago, the president and executive vice president were not reformers. They were going along saying there was nothing wrong.
Right.
And that's where we've got new ones in. And you can, if anybody's been watching what's been happening with NRA over the last 6 months, with the new president, with the new executive vice president, they are doing things to provide value to the members. At the same time, they're going along and really looking at what they're spending money on and what makes sense. One of the most recent announcements that they've made is that they're merging their media, marketing, and institutional advancement into one department. So instead of 3 people working in 3 different directions, they're going to take the same people that need to go out there and touch the members to ask them about joining, or new members, and they're going to do it in a more concerted way. Any large enterprise looks at those kind of opportunities and merges departments. They go along and say, this doesn't make sense in today's environment. Earlier this summer, I know I talked to a lot of people when I was collecting signatures. They were getting inundated with mail. As most NRA members know, you get mail, and then the next day you get more mail from the NRA. Buy this, donate this, special, and just like, why don't they just save the money and not send me all that? Well, they've actually started going along and doing some business intelligence where they go along and look and see what's working, what's not working. They've got a new marketing company that they're working with, one that specializes in nonprofits that's supportive of the NRA mission. Those are some of the things to where they're small, but will actually pay big dividends, because as a member, I don't mind donating money to the NRA. I don't want to see my money wasted on things that do not promote the mission of the NRA.
100%. So how does your business experience and, your career, what would you bring to the board as far as helping in those areas?
Well, for one, most everything runs around IT these days for it. I mean, whether it's social media and you're got to get things out there, you've got to schedule things. I've got a successful podcast, so I've got social media. Also, from a corporate world, I've worked in corporate governance. I've implemented projects, worked with the legal departments in my current company. I've worked with external lawyers, the CFOs, financial people, so I understand accounting systems for it. Probably the one area that I haven't dealt with is probably more on the political activism side of things. But I think the NRA's got that pretty well covered currently. They've got to have a better operations overall. And that's where I've got the global enterprise, large enterprise, to how to deal with large problems and implement things successfully. But also, too, I bring my training experience. I've been training now for over 17 years. Wow. And with that, I can go along and help on the education training, because the NRA education training has been the gold standard for a long time when it comes to those beginner shooters, and that I want to see continue. But I think we can all probably agree that the market has changed quite a bit in the last probably 10, 15 years. We've got constitutional carry in 29 out of 50 states for it. We've got concealed carry in all 50 states. We've got a lot of different needs to go beyond just a basic bullseye shooting program, and more into, okay, how do you go along, move and shoot? How do you go along and de-escalate? How do you go along and use pepper spray or tasers? These different types of products that are there. And as I said, the NRA is the gold standard, but they also need to look at and say, okay, what does the market need? Do we need to have a constitutional carry course, so people realize that it's your right to in those states to carry, but it's also your responsibility. Those laws are.
Yeah, 100%. There's been so many changes, even just in the last 10 years. And I think one of the complaints that we hear the most from, NRA instructors, and I'm an NRA instructor as well, is some of the curriculum's a little bit outdated. And so it's nice to see that there's so much, time and effort being spent on fixing up that education, making it a little bit more current. There's some kind of old fashioned stuff still being taught in some of the curriculums. And so it's good to see some of that getting revamped.
Myself and probably several dozen instructors that I know would be more than happy to go along, literally volunteer our time, to build a defensive shotgun course, to update the pistol course, to go along and have a modern sporting rifle course, different things along those lines that the current course offering the NRA has is lacking. And that's where, they've got dedicated staff there, but they've got a total of 6 staff members. They can only do so much. They can't be generating courses, and they need the budget and the time to be able to do that.
Definitely. What are your thoughts on instructor credentials for board members? It sounds like education's like a big part of where you're coming to this from. What do you kind of think about instructor credentials? Is that something that you want a requirement for board members, or are you okay with a mix?
Well, here's my thought when it comes to board members. If you're going to be a board member, you should be a minimum of a life member for it. I mean, just boom, you should have that commitment to being a life member. And then as you start looking at being on different committees, if you're going to be in education training, you should be an instructor, probably even a training counselor, because a training counselor, you're going to have 50 plus students underneath your belt. So you'll have a little bit more experience about, okay, well, what's it like to teach somebody who's 20 years old versus somebody who's 80 years old? What's it like to teach a women compared to a man? What's it like to teach military versus law enforcement? All these different demographics that you want to be able to bring to the table. But here's one thing too that I don't have a clear answer on this yet. The NRA has a 76 member board currently. Every year, you get elected to a 3-year term. Every year, 25 people are elected onto the board or re-elected, whichever way. And then there's the 76 that is voted for at the convention. Well, a lot people that I've talked to over the last couple of years have said they need such a big board so that they can go along and have all these committees filled. Well, coming from corporate America, I see smaller boards of no more than a dozen or two people that focus to drive results on that. And then they bring in the experts that they need in those specific areas. So instead of going along and having, say, 8 training counselors on the education training committee, you could have 2 or 3 and then bring in the industry experts that know about adult learning, that know about non-lethal type of self-defense, or know that, okay, here's what the marketing says that we need to come up with, and drive it to having courses that are more along those lines, versus trying to go along and having 10 board members in there. You got too many cooks in the kitchen. You've got all different kinds of ideas for it. I mean, being a board member, you should be driving results for it. And that's where, I go along. I'm not going to say it needs to be shrunk, but if it shrinks and I lose my position because of it in 3 years, I wouldn't go along and see that as a bad thing. I'd see that as a good thing, because I'm still going to be an NRA member, and I still want to see my money put to good use. I don't want to go along and be sitting there in 30 years and say, I remember back in 2026 when I got elected. That is not going to be me. I'll guarantee that.
So your concept is that the committee members wouldn't have to be on the board, right? So they would just be kind of brought in as needed on that particular committee, and then the board itself would be much smaller.
Yeah. I mean, currently the board pulls in some non-board, or committees pull in some non-board members, but the vast majority of the membership on the board or the committees are board members, staff, and maybe a couple consultants that they bring in. I'd like to see it be a couple board members, the staff who's got to implement it, and then bring consultants in that you can take and drive results, whether that is education training, whether that is tax and finance, because when you look at all those types of things, you need experts that know what the tax law is. You need to know what audit and finance is. You can't have a bunch of people saying, well, that's what I thought it was, when the IRS comes knocking on your door. Same thing when it comes to education training. Get the experts that really know it, work at it, and then drive the results from there.
I think that's great. You sound really passionate about everything that you're talking about, and hopefully we'll see some change here in the NRA in the next couple of years. I know it's something we've all been hoping for a while. You mentioned a term a couple of times. You said the term reformer. Just really quickly kind of give our listeners an idea of what's the difference between a reformer and kind of the older guard.
Well, the older guard is pretty much everybody who was there prior to 2020. They were the old guard. They supported the old executives that were there. Quite frankly, rubber stamped a lot of their ideas for it. That got the NRA into a lot of trouble for it. They got in trouble for the carry guard back in 2016, 2017. That cost a lot of money. It also got us in trouble with Letitia James up in New York, because when she came after us trying to disband the NRA, she found out she couldn't do that, but she also uncovered that some of those executives were not doing their jobs properly. They were expensing things they shouldn't be expensing. And I bring those points up simply because, as a board member, you have a fiduciary responsibility to make sure that the nonprofit money is being used properly, and going along and paying for things that are not appropriate is not proper fiduciary responsibilities for it. And we've got new people on the audit committee, new people on the finance committee. They're looking to address those issues. And as a reformer, the people I've helped put there, they've helped initiate and I'm going to be following in their footsteps to go along and make additional reforms in the education training area, as well as the kind of the third area that I like to focus on or talk about is in the demographics. NRA is is appealing to. And I bring that up from the standpoint of, I went out and I collected over 500 signatures in order to get on the ballot, as well as I was nominated by the board. So I'm very proud of having both those nominations. But talking to thousands of people, and I literally did, you find out that there's a lot of gun owners that don't see a need for the NRA. And they don't see a need for the NRA because of what's been going on over the last 5, 10, maybe 15 years, depending on how old they are. And that's where people need to realize that, you know, the good stuff the NRA does. The NRA also has gotten into some social issues, which have turned off different demographics because they think the NRA is, quite frankly, a bunch of old white guys, versus they should be looking at it. NRA is a pro 2A organization. We don't care what color your hair is, your skin, or anything else like that. As long as you're supportive of the 2A, you should, you know, feel welcomed in the NRA for it. And that's one of those pieces, because I'll give you a quick example. I went to a gun show in Ohio, a gun show for gun collectors. I'll even more specific for it. And 90% of the people there weren't NRA members. Ohio's pretty gun friendly, and 90% of the people there were not members. And it shocked me, because I could see it maybe, you know, if it's Illinois or someplace that is anti-gun, you know, really hard, and not many people have guns. But in Ohio, we've got a lot of people with guns, a lot of really neat guns. And when people don't see a need to support the NRA, who's out there fighting for it, you realize there's an image problem. Mm-hmm. And the old guard didn't really see a problem with their image. The new guard were realizing that, hey, we need to get out there after those 8 million new gun owners during the pandemic and say, hey, we're here supporting your right to go along and own firearms. It's not just one gun a month. It's not just a 10-round magazine, but your right to go along and own a firearm legally for it. Well, and that's.
I got to tell you, what you're talking about, I'd given up on the NRA. I defended them and then just walked away and said, all right, I think that's it. And a lot of people stepped up, a lot of organizations stepped up and filled the vacuum. And I thought to myself, okay, well, I think the NRA is just done. Like
maybe a little diversity is good, right? Like more organizations, maybe that's beneficial. Mm-hmm.
Maybe. And I kind of, be honest with you, just didn't care what happened with the NRA. The NRA has won me back person by person. People like board members, Amanda and Doug Hamlin, mm-hmm. like actual personal conversations. And not everybody gets to do that. So I'm really happy that I was able to connect with these people and that they personally convinced me that this was a good thing that they were doing. And I'm hearing a lot of the same things. In fact, everything you've said, I think is right on point, particularly when you were saying, hey, we need to work on the infrastructure. We need to work on the things, the non-political things, because you're right. NRA's got, you know, politics and political opinions and political employees and connections out the yin-yang. But what needs to happen, and I don't think that it's obvious to everybody, what needs to happen with any organization for them to be effective is, you know, the people in the back office have to be doing have to have the ability to do their jobs and have to have the support to do their jobs. Has to be modern and you know, efficient. Otherwise, all the other stuff that, you know, the stuff that people are donating for the NRA to do, it doesn't happen, or at least doesn't happen effectively. So I really truly appreciate it. I think you're one of the people that are. I'm going to add you to the list of people that are winning me over. That the NRA is important, but this whole long diatribe here that I'm given, why is it important? Why was it important to you? Why didn't you just walk away from the NRA and say, hey, you know what, I'm done. Like all this ridiculousness that's happening, I'm just going to support this group or that group or the other group. Why is it important for you personally? Why did you say, hey, you know what, the NRA has to exist and I'm going to throw my hat in the ring and help them?
Well, early 2000s, when we started having concealed carry in Ohio, I became an NRA life member. And because of that, I could walk away, but I was still a member because I'm a life member. I wasn't going to go along, write them and you know, turn in my life membership card for it. And being a instructor, you see that there are benefits to it. The piece about it is, and we talked to a lot of staffers over the years about updating education training, and every time we get that bunch of email or bunch of mail in the mailbox, you shake your head and it's like there's got to be a better way of doing it. And every time I said that, and every time I went to an annual meeting, I'd end up talking to somebody. I'd end up talking a little bit more about, okay, what can we do here? And that's when you run into people, like Amanda. You run into people like Rick Ector. You run into people like Todd Ellis, and you start, they're saying, yeah, we understand, we know, and then they go along there. But if you can help me, this is what you can do. And I'm not one of those people normally to take a back seat. And if I can help, steer the ship in the right direction, get the right people in the captain's seat doing those types of things, I'm going to step up and do what I can, because I don't like, some of the political environment we're in currently, to where for any problem that comes up, we point to the other guy. It's not my fault. It's his fault. It's like, well, if somebody would have done something, we wouldn't be in this situation, would we? But we're always willing to pass the buck to somebody else. And I'm the opposite, to where it's like, okay, if I can do it, I'll do it. Just, point me in the right direction. That's where helping people get on the board for the last 5 years is. I'm very happy with that. They've asked me this year to, jump on the ballot and help out along those lines, and gives me additional visibility into it. Being at the NRA annual meeting, I have Doug Hamlin walking around by himself and listening to NRA members tell them how bad they screwed up. I mean, that's pretty ballsy. I mean, when you really think about it. And Doug Hamlin was not sugarcoating, and he's like, "You're right. I'm not gonna make excuses for it." And that's what we've got to go along and do. We need you to stay with us so that we can continue to go along and do the good work, because we got the NRA Foundation, we've got the women's programs, we've got the IEGO program, all these different pieces that are doing really good, that are overshadowed too much by the stuff that was done by the old guard. And that's where we're really trying to go and make that break, to make sure that people see value. Here's a simple one that the current board is working on that I can't wait to see, but they're actually putting together a smartphone app. So as an NRA member, you can download the app and you can actually find out what's going on. Now, here's one of those things that blows my mind. I'm vice president for Ohio Rifle and Pistol Association. Most people, when they talk to me, it's like, yeah, I wouldn't mind go shooting, pistol, rifle, shotgun. But they have no idea what competitions are going on, because the NRA only prints those in their magazines that come out. You've got to have it in 45 days ahead of time for it prints. So it's between 2 and 3 months old by the time it gets printed. At the same time, I'm doing classes right down the street from these people, and they don't know where to find the NRA classes that are around, or an NRA club. Having a NRA app, I think, would be a great benefit, because then when people go along and say, well, what's the NRA doing for me? Well, there are Friends of NRA events. There are grants that you can apply for your high school shooting team. There are these women events that are there. There are these pistol competitions and rifle events that you can go to, and people go along, wow, I get all that for $35 a year. And it's like, yep. And those are some of the things that people just don't realize, and have been overshadowed for way too long for it, because the NRA does quite a bit. We need Second Amendment Foundation. We need Firearm Policy Coalition. We need Gun Owners of America, because one of the things that I go along, and a lot of these groups have flourished as the NRA has struggled, but I don't see them as competition, because we're all doing our little piece for the Second Amendment, whether it's the Second Amendment Foundation leading a lot of litigation that's going straight up to the Supreme Court to get litigated and coming up with some great, or you got Gun Owners of America really pushing at the state level to go along and have laws changed. We've all got our own little focus. I'm a member of all those organizations, but at the same time, I'm a member not because I don't believe in the NRA. I'm a member because I believe in their mission, just like the NRA, and realize the NRA has a lot of programs for it. Excellent. They need to do a better job of advertising for it, but we also need to have somebody, like Adam Kraut and the Second Amendment Foundation, really pushing litigation. And we need somebody like Eric Pratt over there at Gun Owners of America going along and saying, no, Ohio or Illinois or whatever the state is, you can't do that. And if you do that, we're gonna go along and raise an army up against you, because we're gonna have your constituents up in arms, as well as litigation from the Second Amendment Foundation. Oh, by the way, and then we're going to go along shoulder to shoulder with the NRA, and they're like, yeah, we don't want to go. That's going to be 3-on-1, and that's where we make headway. We made headway with the NFA this year. The tax is down to 0, but hopefully in the next 6 to 12 months, maybe we can get the NFA abolished altogether. We'll just see how well.
Completely.
But they're all playing nicely together, which is a new thing in the Second Amendment space, that everybody's playing together.
Well, it's nice to see, right? It's been a long time since we've seen kind of this copacetic relationship between the organizations, and I think honestly, it's a great outlook to have. I'm looking forward to the next few years in the Second Amendment space, and thanks so much for coming on and talking to us. We really appreciated this time with you. So.
I appreciate one last thing for the listeners that are out there. The ballots will be out in the February edition of the NRA magazine for it. The people will be getting the 3rd week of January. And if they want to find some information about me and the other reform candidates, you can go out to electanewNRA.com. And you've got our bios for all 21 of the reform candidates. There's 21 out of the 38 that you'll find on that website that I would highly encourage everybody to look at closely. And then, support the reform efforts so we can continue pushing the NRA in the right direction, so it supports its members and also the Second Amendment.
Great. We'll put the link to the reform website up under this clip. So thanks, Rob. Appreciate everything you do, man.
I appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you.
Take care.
Have a good one.
Hey, thanks for watching Gun Owners Radio. I hope you loved that clip. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and follow us on social media, and check out our website at gunownersradio.com.